Ukraine says its troops are continuing their slow advance in the south against Russian forces dug in along the front lines. Russian-backed officials in the Donetsk region say one person was killed and 9 wounded by Ukrainian shelling of villages there. Ukraine's leaders insist the 3-month-old counteroffensive is making progress, even if it's not as quick as some were expecting. And even in places where Russian forces have withdrawn, they reportedly leave behind landmines that slow the Ukrainian advance. CNN's Katie Pugliese is monitoring developments for us in London. So, Katie, again, it's been a constant theme this week, more pushback from Ukraine on the state of the counteroffensive.
Absolutely, Kim. They are very insistent that this counteroffensive is going ahead with success. And I think really to sum up that insistence, a tweet yesterday from Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky really encapsulated it. He said, quite simply, Ukrainian forces are moving forward. Despite everything and no matter what anyone says, we are advancing, and that is the most important thing. We are on the move. Now, what everyone says is a clear reference to clearly comments he's received, criticism perhaps of how slow this counteroffensive appears to have been moving. And I think that confidence, really, that insistence that he's having there is perhaps because there has been some progress. There have been some marginal gains on this southern frontier, this front line that we've been talking about. Robotynia, a village in the Zaporizhia region, they recently recaptured from the Russians. That is a clear success for the Ukrainians, and they have been moving further, progressing further on, south and east, eventually heading towards the Sea of Azov. But it's worth noting, and you referenced there earlier about the Donetsk region, that they are also targeting other areas, but the Russians also are too. We talk about Donetsk. There was also some shelling by the Russians as well, some Ukrainians injured overnight. And it's a reminder of the civilian toll of this conflict, that while Ukraine is targeting this one particular area of the front line, there is a very long front line with the other areas also still receiving a lot of Russian attacks, and other areas of Ukraine still receiving a lot of Russian drone attacks as well.
Yeah, and one of those other areas being attacked, the Odessa region. Tell us more about that.
Well, Kim, Odessa has been a key region that we've talked about a lot in this conflict, and it's because it's a port where a lot of Ukrainian grain is exported from. Ukraine's grain is really sourced to the rest of the world. It's one of the key grain exporters, and food security has been really impacted by this conflict with Ukraine and Russia. And so as a result of that, there was the UN-backed deal called the Black Sea Grain Deal that was basically set up to ensure that grain could get out of Ukraine's ports. And what we've been seeing since Russia then withdrew from this deal earlier this year is that there have been a lot of accusations of Russia targeting this port infrastructure, targeting areas where this grain is produced, including warehouses. And what we've seen in the early hours is yet again this port infrastructure in Odessa being targeted. You can see that there was fire as a result. Ukraine says that firefighters were quick to extinguish it, but it did result in 2 people wounded as well as a result. So clearly these kind of drone attacks are going to continue. And as we've talked about with drone attacks this week, it's another interesting sign that drone attacks are being used by both the Ukraine